everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'll be teaching you how to play the piano, and this video is for beginners. If you've never played the piano before, don't worry, because I'll be showing you the basics to build your foundation to start to play harder pieces. So you're probably wondering why you should take advice and learn to play the piano from a teen. Well, no worries, because I have been playing piano for quite a while now, almost 12 years. I think I have the right knowledge to start giving lessons to people from all my experience. So I just figured that I'd use this quarantine time to teach you guys while you're at home through YouTube. So the first thing that you need to know before you start to learn to play the piano, is your finger numbers. So this is just basic things where the first thing to know when you start playing is your finger numbers, because in pieces sometimes they'll use fingers to what you need to play. So on both your left and right hand, your pinky these are called your fifth fingers, and then the next finger over, these are your fourth fingers. Then third, second, and your thumbs are your first fingers. And this is the case for any piece you play. The finger numbers will always stay the same. I just wanted to give a quick explanation because I wanted to facilitate your understanding when I reference finger numbers, or if you see it in piano pieces in the future. So the next thing is key names. The next most important step to learning to play the piano is to know your key names. So first, I want to start by showing you the universal key note that any beginner learns to help them figure out the rest of the letter names. And that key is middle C, right here. Now, it is called middle C because it is the letter C, and I'll tell you later on how I know it is middle C and how I know it's a C, and because it's the middle note in the entire keyboard. So let me play it one more time. So the way I know how to identify the C key is because it is in between the two different sets of black keys. So, as you've probably noticed already, there are two different sets of black keys that alternate on the keyboard. So, you have the set of 3 black keys, like here, and then you have the set of 2 black keys. Then you have 3 again, and you have 2 again. So that just alternates along the entire keyboard. So that is a pattern that can help you identify different notes. But any C on the keyboard is the first white key after the set of 3 black keys. So you have the set of 3 black keys over here, right? And then after the note C is the first note, the first white key note that is after that set of 3. So anywhere on the keyboard, like over here, this would be letter C. Over here, this would be letter C because it's the first white key note after the set of 3 black keys. Okay? But also using the set of 2 black keys to identify the C is that it is the first white key before the set of 2 black keys starts. So you have the set of 2, right? And this is C. C starts right before the 2 black keys. Okay? Here's another example. So you have C, right? And it starts right before the set of 2 black keys. And another one here, C, and it starts right before the set of 2 black keys. So remember, C is the one after the set of 3 black keys and before the set of 2 black keys. Okay? I'll keep the letter C showing on the keyboard for the rest of the video, just so you can remember to reference that every time I'm showing like different note names. So now that you have this reference, I can teach you the rest of the letter names on the keyboard. So one very important thing to note is that on a keyboard, there are only 6 different letter names that continue over and over for the entire keyboard. Those 6 letters are A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Sorry, E, F, and G. Okay? So, oh, sorry, that was 7 letters. Wow, I can't count. 7 letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Okay? So those are the only possible letter names for any of the keys on the keyboard. So don't ever play a scale or something and you go continue after G, you go H, I, because that's not possible, because there's no such thing as H, I, and so on and so forth on the keyboard or on the piano. So remember those 7 letters, the first 7 letters of the alphabet. So when you go downwards, on the keyboard, or in piano terms we call it descending, after the middle C, you have B. So here's middle C. And to find B, you can reference C and you go down 1 and you have B. And then after that you have A. And then after that you have G. Following G you have F. Next E. And then D. And finally C again. And you probably noticed the C is where I showed you at the beginning. So if you want to go ascending upwards from middle C, you have middle C again. Then next, following C, you have D. Then E, F, G, A, B, and C. And then after C, you just continue D, E, F, and so on and so forth, and you don't pass G. After G, you restart to A. So let me show you an example of that again. So you have C, D, E, F, G, and this is not H, this is now you restart back to A, B, then C. Now that you know the alphabet of the keyboard of the piano, you can just continue to practice that multiple times until you can recognize which keys are which letters. Okay, so let me just play it one more time, ascending and descending, or going up and going down. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Then descending, C, D, A, G, F, E, D, C. Okay, so now that you know your key names, I'm going to move on to the next step, because you are able to now easily identify specific notes. So a nice practice to do is finding specific notes on the keyboard. And a really good tip for when you're just beginning is to use middle C as your reference. Sometimes just when someone asks you to find a random letter name on the keyboard and you don't have a reference, it might be harder. But once you know what one key is and you've memorized that one key, it'll help you to figure out the other ones. So if I say find F, you can find middle C. Remember middle C in your head. And then after you go C, D, E, F. And you go, okay, this is F, right? Okay. So the more times you practice, the easier it will be to find the notes, and you'll no longer need to use this reference. But for now, that's what we're going to continue to use. Okay, so next, I'm going to show you half and whole steps. So half and whole steps is the next thing to learn after you know all the basics and how to figure out and navigate the keyboard. So I wanted to explain the half and whole steps just really quickly to help you with what I'm going to explain later in the next step. So, a half step, which is also called a semitone in piano terms, is when you start on any note on the keyboard, literally any note, whether it's a black or white key, and you either go up one step, one key, or a half step. So it would be like going from A, for example, to the next closest note. Not any further, just the next note closest to that A, which would be the black key right above it, either to the right or to the left, and that would be a half step, or a semitone, sorry. So you, again, go from A to the next black key above. So in the next step, I'll explain what the black keys names are, but for now, I just want you to know that when you go from one note to the next closest note, it is called a half step. So let me show you one more time. A to the black key right above it. You can also do A, and you can go descending, going down the keyboard, and you go A, and you press this black key. That would also be considered a half step. You're just going in different directions on the keyboard. So you have, this is a half step, and this is also a half step. Okay? So another example for a half step would be E to F. Now this is a different example because there's no black keys involved, but it's also considered a half step. So you go from E to F or F to E, vice versa. That is a half step, okay? You'll know if it's a half step because there is no other key in between them. Like there is no note in between the examples I just showed you. So like I said, the A to the black key, there's literally no note in between that or separating them. They are just the consecutive tone right after the A. Or you can go like this, vice versa. But there's no note separating them. And that's how you can tell if a half step is being played. Or like the E and the F, there is no note in between them. There's no other key in between them. They are just consecutive notes, keys on the keyboard. So you E, F. Okay? So now that you know a half step, I'm going to explain to you what a whole step is. So, a whole step, which is also called a whole tone in piano terms, is going from G to A or C to D. And you probably noticed that in between the two notes this time around, there is another key in between the two notes that I played, which is how you can distinguish a whole step from a half step, okay? So when I play the G to the A, you notice that there is a black key in between them. When there is one key in between the two notes that you're playing, that's how you know it is a whole step. But if I do this, G to B, that is not a whole step. That is something completely different. That's why you just want to make sure there's only one note in between the two notes that you're playing, and that's how you create a whole step. So let me play it again. G to A. And the other example was C to D. And in between C to D again, there is a black key separating them, and that's how you know this is a whole step. So I'm going to show you a half step again and a whole step. Here's a half step. Or. Again, also. Or. Okay. So now that you know how to distinguish half and whole steps, you know how to find notes on the keyboard, you know your key names and your finger numberings, I'm going to move on to the next, one of the most essential things a beginner needs to learn as well for future pieces, is to recognize sharps and flats. Now, this is the step that I was talking about when I was explaining the half and whole steps. it's called sharps and flats. So back to the black keys. Black keys have a special name, and every black key on the keyboard, every single one, has two different key names. It can be called two different things, okay? So the black keys are called sharps and flats. So I'm going to give you an example using a key on the keyboard. So a sharp black key is when you are raising a note by a half step, also known as a semitone. For example, you have the key G. So raising it to a sharp would be playing the next highest, going upward on the keyboard. Black is G, and here's G sharp. Okay? So now a flat is when you lower a note by a half step or a semitone. So here I'll use G again as an example. You have G, and lowering it by a half step would be to play the black key that is right above it, but to its left this time, going downwards on the keyboard / piano. So here's G, and here's G flat. Again, here's G, and here's G flat. So a flat, again, just to recall, a flat is when you lower it by a semitone and you're going downwards on the keyboard, and a sharp is raising a note by a semitone but going upward on a keyboard, okay? So let me give you another example. So you have A, right? So to raise it, to play A sharp, you play the black key that is right next to it on the going upwards on the keyboard. So here's A, and here's A sharp, and I'm just raising it by a semitone or a half step, and that's making it sharp. And then to make it A flat, I play A, and then here's A flat, going downwards on the keyboard. Maybe you noticed this, maybe you didn't, but the A flat and the G sharp were the same black key, okay? Just like I said before, each black key has two names, okay? So this one could be called G sharp or A flat. Now, whichever one you have to play, it all depends on the key of the music and what it is asking you to play. I'll show you the different names of each of the black keys that you can see here, and I'll put them on the screen. Each black key has two names. Like the example I gave you, could be called G sharp or A flat. And they both sound the same, but they all represent different key signatures, okay? Now that you know all of that, I'm going to wrap up this lesson by prepping you to start playing pieces, okay? Before you start playing actual music, you must know how to position your hand. I'll put a picture of an illustration on how to position your hand on the screen right now. So take a screenshot if you need to for later references. But one big no-no when placing your hand on the keyboard is laying your fingers flat and resting your wrist on the edge of the piano like this. Okay? That is a very big no-no, and that is not the proper hand position for when you're playing piano. And plus, it's not comfortable or practical when you need to move far distances like this. So here's the right way to position your hands, okay? So first start by curling your fingers like this. So I'm going to keep mine flat, but I'm going to keep my wrist on the keyboard just to show you how I transition to the corrected hand position. So I curl my fingers like this, okay? And then secondly, you lift your wrists. And I've always made a mistake, and sometimes I still do. I raise my shoulders when I play, but you want to keep everything nice and relaxed. And if you don't keep it relaxed, that can lead to injuries, which is not good. So you want to make sure you keep everything relaxed and flexible, right? So you can just move your wrists however you need to when you're playing, if you're stretching and stuff like that, okay? So yeah, you just want to keep your fingertips curled so that your fingertips are the ones touching the keys. So you're just like this onto the keyboard. So this is the keyboard, right? And you're just like touching with your fingertips on top. So, and then you want to lift your wrist and make sure your wrist is relaxed and flexible also, okay? And when you play, use your wrist and your arms like to move and play the keyboard. Don't use your hands because that's just going to create stomping and it's not going to create a nice sound. So make sure you use your wrist and your arms to just flow and move along the keys, okay? So the number one tip for hand positioning is to keep your arms and hands relaxed at all times. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hoped you enjoyed and I really hoped it was helpful. And stay tuned for the next video because I'll be doing more parts on how to develop your piano playing skills. And I'll be showing you more pieces and I'll giving you beginner pieces to play. I'll give you a quick hint. One of them is happy birthday. I hope you like this video. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye!